Commissioners, you have a public discussion item with a resolution affirming Clackamas County's support of pollinators. Commissioner Schrader and I will be your presenters this evening. I'll kick it off, Commissioner Schrader, if you don't mind. So this is an item Commissioner Schrader has brought before the Commission to have the Commission approve a formal resolution detailing the imperative role pollinators play in the health of county forests and animal habitat, as well as agriculture and other industries. We have a video we'd like to start with by showing you first. This is a video that is an excerpt from Oregon Public Broadcasting Field Guide that aired last year. It's just a few short minutes, so if you'll please draw your attention to the screen.
The European honeybee might get all the attention, but a true bee connoisseur will point you to the native species. From fuzzy bumblebees to glistening sweat bees and stately longhorns, native bees are wild critters of almost endless variety.
Here we go.
They possess the kind of charm that attracts amateur insect lovers like wasps at a picnic.
Oh, here's a good one.
But these aren't just any biophytes. Led by Master Gardener Michael O'Loughlin, they're on a statewide mission.
Our effort is to go around and to sample all the bees we can and figure out what species are in Yamhill County, and there are other groups throughout the state that are doing the other counties.
You heard that right. They are trying to survey every bee species in Oregon for the very first time. Experts believe around 500 species might live in the state, but no one actually knows for sure, which is a problem because we could be losing them at an alarming rate.
Over the weekend, dead bumblebees started falling from these trees until eventually shoppers reported it to the various stores.
In 2013, a massive bee kill in Wilsonville, Oregon made national news. Upwards of 50,000 bumblebees died from exposure to an over-the-counter insecticide called Safari. A novice landscaper had applied it to the blooming linden trees, not knowing the havoc it would wreak. Or as one bee expert told KGW,
I've never seen any sort of a die-off of bumblebees on this scale.
But why was the die-off such a big deal? Well, alongside honeybees, bumblebees and other native bees are essential to the pollination of many of the crops that make up Oregon's $6 billion agricultural industry. So in 2014, the state legislature passed a bill that declared a pollinator emergency.
We became the only state in the whole country that has a funded mandate to put together a strategic health plan for pollinators.
Sarah Kincaid is an entomologist with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. To fulfill the mandate, her department teamed up with other state agencies in 2017 to create the Oregon Bee Project. Sarah says the Bee Project's mission is to expand our understanding of Oregon's bees, to increase their habitat, and to protect them from pesticide exposure and disease.
Our long-term goal is really to assess whether or not bee species here in Oregon are declining or whether or not they're stable.
To do that, first we need to figure out exactly what species call Oregon home, something the state has never had the resources to do. So the Oregon Bee Project turned to volunteers. Now anyone can sign up with a local team as part of what organizers are calling the Oregon Bee Atlas.
Thanks to Oregon State University Extension Office for providing us that video. We have two invited speakers who would quickly like to share more updates on pollination and pollinators in Clackamas County. I'll invite them to come to the testimony table here. Antony Melathopoulos, who is Pollinator Health Extension Specialist at Oregon State University, and Carol Yamada, Stafford Hamlet resident. So please go ahead.
So,
You have to go first, Carol? Okay.
call these two people. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here on the occasion of this resolution. I've been asked to speak a little bit about the importance of pollinators here in Clackamas County, and there's a number of crops in the county that are dependent on pollinators. The vegetable seeds, red radish, the clover seed industry centered in the county, of course, the largest being blueberry, and also the caneberries and strawberries, all of these crops require bee pollination. And the thing that's really unique, I think we've heard about honeybee colonies being trucked around the United States. That's not the case in Oregon. Our beekeepers leave the state just now. They've headed to California to do almond pollination, but they're going to be in the state for the rest of the year doing pollination all the way from Hermiston into this county, across the Cascades into Madras. The other reason that bees are so important, as you saw in that video, is Oregonians are very proud of our natural environment, and we have this rich endowment of bees, that we have more bee species in Oregon than all the states east of the Mississippi. And people really love that. When we've talked to people around the state, they're so surprised that we have these bees and they want to learn more about them. They're hungry for information. The last thing that I was going to say is that the video started with an incident that was here in the county, and I'm really amazed at how much work has been done, both here at the county, but also at the state level, in kind of taking that tragedy and turning it into something extremely positive. We have the strongest pollinator education program anywhere in the United States here in Oregon. We train thousands of pesticide applicators on how to use products correctly so that they can get their work done. There's very good cooperation between the beekeepers and various land managers. And as you saw in that video, we've got one of the most robust survey programs for native bees anywhere in the U.S. So lots is going right, and I really commend the counselors. And the last thing I was going to say is you can see that box right there by Commissioner Schrader. There's also a lot of people who are keeping these native bees in their backyards. We have about a quarter of the species will nest in these little holes, and it's a real pleasure for people around the county to be able to watch these bees up close with their kids.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Yamada. I live in the Stafford hamlet, and we border 3 bee cities. Bees are really big where I live. I started my pollinator garden just a year ago. It was kind of in response to climate change is real. What can I do? So I decided instead of planting vegetables, I would plant flowers, but I didn't know anything about bees or flowers. So I went online and did a lot of research, and I realized how much I didn't know about bees. I thought all bees made honey, and I thought all bees lived in hives, but actually almost none of them do. And so I got this bee suit, and I went around, and I decided I would tell everybody that would listen to me that, wow, you really got to take care of your bees. You have to understand their life cycle and garden appropriately, accordingly to their life cycle. Because although bees in ag areas are really important, they have done studies that show that in the areas where we live, in the suburban areas, there's actually more pollinators and more varieties of pollinators because we don't use as much poisons, and we have more variety of flowers, and we're living in the areas that bees would naturally live in. So there's a lot we can do to help bees, and in my garden, in 1 year, I had so many bees, and they were so lovely, and I'm hoping that they come back again. So I'm really excited that you guys are doing this pollinator initiative. Going forward, if we do have severe climate change, we're going to have to be really nimble so that we can protect our pollinators and pay attention to what's going on. And the culture that you are creating by making everybody in the county bee aware is fantastic. And so I'm really thankful that Martha Schrader has gone through and made this happen. I know she's been working on it a year, and I thank you guys all for supporting it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have 2 other folks that the chair kindly gave me 2 names to call up who came here specifically. Thank you for coming. And Anthony and I studied the same genus of bees, we found out tonight when we talked. But I'll go into that a little bit later. So we have Fred Weiler and Jackie Hammond are here tonight. Is Jackie here? There she is. Okay.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me a few moments to address the commission. My name is Fred Weiler. I'm a husband, a father, an educator, and farmer. We have a small family farm in Estacada where we grow pastured pork and poultry to sell at farmers markets. I am happy to see your resolution in support of pollinators. By the language used in your resolution, it is obvious this body understands the impacts of climate change and your responsibility in being a part of the transition from fossil fuels. It is also apparent from the resolution you believe in science and are working to protect our citizens and environment. This resolution is a great starting point to that end. I trust when the county comes up with its climate action plan, solid protections will be put in place to not only recognize the importance of pollinators, but also do something to protect them. While butterfly gardens are helpful, they do nothing to protect the pollinators we so desperately need for so many of our crops. This resolution recognizes the decline of honeybees worldwide, and scientists believe glyphosate are linked to the decline. Glyphosate are the most common herbicide used in the world to control broadleaves and unwanted grasses, the most common of these being Roundup. There are over 750 different glyphosate-containing products sold in the United States alone. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer has called glyphosate a probable human carcinogen. Evidence is mounting that people who are heavily exposed to glyphosate, such as landscapers, tree farm and nursery workers, and farmers, have an increased risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Glyphosate are just one of the hundreds of chemicals sprayed on our forests, fields, crops, lawns, and schoolyards. Not only do these chemicals hurt our pollinators, the unwanted overspray and drift contaminate neighboring properties, streams, gardens, playgrounds, pastures, and parks. If we are to protect our pollinators, it only makes sense we also protect ourselves and our food sources from the same chemicals that are killing our pollinators. On our farm, we use organic practices. We believe soil health and regenerative farming is our most important duty. We don't feed our animals GMO grains. Instead, we rotationally graze our animals on pasture and woodlot. Our goal is to leave as little negative impact as possible by doing our best to sequester carbon through minimal tilling and rotational grazing, as well as leaving select stands of timber. We do our best to protect our mason bee and native bumblebees, as well as our own honeybees, by not spraying anything. Ending the use of glyphosates may be the only thing we can do to truly protect these as well as other pollinators. Our climate is changing at a rapid rate. I recently read an article talking about the acidification of the Pacific Ocean affecting the reproduction, organ development, and shell strength of Dungeness crab on the Oregon coast. Scientists say this is happening decades earlier than expected. Wildfires, drought, habitat loss, deforestation, and greed are all hastening the effects of climate change. Just last week, President Trump addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and called the scientific community, along with environmentalists, prophets of doom. I ask you to take strong action so this message is not a prophecy of doom, but an opportunity to create a sustainable future. You are uniquely positioned to create a climate action plan that is good for not only the environment, but also the economy, one that can be an example to the rest of our state. I ask you as a commission to ask yourself one simple question when any policy or action is to be considered. Is it good for the planet? I would like to ask you a question before I go. How do you want to be remembered? Will you leave a legacy of nice words or meaningful action? Thank you for your time and for your recognition of the importance of pollinators.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jackie Hammond Williams. I'm a resident of Clackamas County and a 12-year manager of the Oregon City Farmers Market. I'm here to applaud you with your resolution for support of pollinators. I'm urging you to go further. I would love to see you ban neonicotinoids and glyphosate in Clackamas County. I don't know if our road crews are using it in the county, but pollinators do not need to be drenched in chemicals. We have a lot of specialty crops. I'm here, in support of farmers. The small farmers in Clackamas County grow specialty crops. Most of those are open pollinated. They need pollinators. So you're supporting pollinators, and pollinators in return support our crops. I really hope that, as I say, you'll go a little bit further in the resolution. This is a great start, but I would really like to see some firm action. And maybe if the county can ban these chemicals, then cities will follow and we'll gradually get a clean county. And
you know, we have so many pollinators that need our help with climate change and the dousing of chemicals, they're not thriving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. To say a few words to that, one of the reasons I brought this forward, I don't know if many people know, I'm actually a trained entomologist. And when I met Anthony from Oregon State Extension, we realized we actually worked on the same genus of bees, actually, at one time. And I did actually start my career working out for the Department of Agriculture here in Oregon as a young entomologist. And so it's a long story how I got here, but I've never forgotten my roots. And my bees were blueberry pollinators, and one of the things I want to stress to people is that without these creatures, we would have a potential collapse of a food shed here. They pollinate major crops in our county, including blueberries, clover seeds, vegetable seeds, blueberries, pears, cherries. And so without these native populations, we would have some difficulty actually kind of growing our food. And the thing that people need to understand is when you're native, you know, we have honeybees. They're not native. They are not native to American soil. They were brought over from Europe. But native bees are endemic. They live here. They've evolved here. So oftentimes, they can go out and do their work at far lower temperatures in the field for pollination purposes. So that's why I brought my bee box with me. This is a mason bee box. And we also call them blue orchard bees, and the technical name is Osmia lignaria. And essentially, you can actually have these creatures in your backyard. You can order bee boxes online, and you can also order those little tiny pupae that you take. You put them in here, and you keep this opened. But you have to get them really in February and March. This is the other thing. These are very, very early spring bees. Put the pupae in there, they will emerge, they will start pollinating, and they will actually get a whole nother generation of these very important pollinators going for the next route. So I'm encouraging people to look into this, and please know that there's lots of different literature out on the table outside, as well as pollinator seeds. So if you're a gardener and you are interested in this, I would suggest you take a look at that. And also, this is a little postcard I hope you can all get. It's Bees of Oregon. And on the back, it talks about the Oregon Bee Project. Anthony was correct. We are actually one of the top states in terms of educating and really doing the research and promoting wild and managed bees through education and pollinator-friendly practices and research. So I want to thank my colleagues for indulging me in my going back to my entomology roots, and then I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Please. Okay. Whereas pollinators include animals such as bees and other insects, birds, and bats that transfer pollen from flower to flower, resulting in the fertilization and subsequent seed and fruit production for plants. And whereas pollinators play a vital role in the health of our forests and grasslands, which provide forage, fish, and wildlife habitat, timber, water, mineral resources, and recreational opportunities, as well as enhanced economic development and tourism opportunities for communities. And whereas 3/4 of the Earth's flowering plants and 35% of the world's food crops depend on animal pollination to reproduce, and over 150 food crops in the United States depend on pollinators, including nearly all fruit and grain crops. And whereas the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has reported that between 235 billion and 577 billion worth of annual global food production relies on direct contributions by pollinators. And whereas the agricultural industry in Clackamas County is a critical part of our local economy, and together with the nurseries, greenhouses, and food production industries, generates a localized gross product of more than 277 million. And whereas the world is facing a climate change crisis brought on by the rise of carbon dioxide levels, and Clackamas County is developing a climate action plan that will state our intended actions to reduce our carbon footprint. And whereas populations of important pollinators include bees, they're declining at alarming levels, and climate change and habitat loss are contributing to pollinators' increasing vulnerability. Whereas Clackamas County has a strategic priority to honor, utilize, promote, and invest in our natural resources. Now, therefore, the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners resolves as follows. Where and whenever appropriate, Clackamas County will take steps to install and maintain pollinator gardens and pursue other actions on its lands and infrastructure to improve these animals' abilities to survive, flourish, and thrive. Where and whenever appropriate, Clackamas County will take steps to install, promote, and maintain the use of mason bee boxes and other similar items and natural features that promote healthy pollinator activity and habitat. County departments will adopt integrated measures within their operating policies and practices to better reflect the absolute importance of pollinators and to minimize the impact of any actions that could hurt pollinator populations. The county will promote to our community the importance of pollinators and the actions that Clackamas County is taking to help them thrive, as well as actions our residents and stakeholders can take to do the same. The county's forthcoming climate action plan will include adaptation actions and best practices that can help pollinators in our community continue to persist, with further recommended actions on how our body can help them. The county and its departments will annually recognize and promote National Pollinator Week and other related celebrations as appropriate, dated this 30th day of January 2020. And as far as how we manage our lands here, we are really taking a look at our integrated pest management policies so we can make sure that when we're using materials, we are doing them safely and appropriately in a way that doesn't harm pollinators. One of my jobs as an entomologist was to really study integrated pest management, and I want to thank Gary Schmidt, our administrator, and my colleagues for allowing us to take a look at this a little more thoroughly so we can really be appropriate with anything that we use. So I think we're on a good path, and I thank you all for being a captive audience here tonight for this. And I would encourage you to take all of this information home with you and volunteer with OSU, Oregon State University, with the Bees of Oregon, and become a part of the group that helps identify all the native species of bees that we have here in our state. So with that, colleagues, I'm done. So.
Does any commissioner have any clarifying questions of Martha or the rest of the audience?
No.
No? Well, then I'd ask for a motion to approve this item.
I move to approve this resolution.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a resolution affirming Clackamas County's support of pollinators. Any further discussion? Yes, Paul?
So I just want to say one thing. This obviously created quite a buzz, and I understand there's a lot. There's a lot of people in the audience here that operate Airbnbs.
There you go. Well, who I would encourage to have pollinator gardens on your property, if you can do that. Okay.
You just had to bug us with that, didn't you?
No, let's stop right now. With that, I still have to call for all those in favor. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, no opposition. Motion carries.